Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. In this video, we are from group 2 from section 2 going to present about laboratory wastage. My name is Muhammad Amir Al-Hafiz Shah bin Muhammad Rosnizam. My metric number is 2012171. Okay, in laboratory, there are a lot of wastage can occur. Firstly is chemical wastage. Chemical wastage can occur through improper use, overuse, or disposal of items. This can occur through spillage, evaporation, expiration, mixing of chemicals, and so on. Number 2 is equipment wastage. Equipment wastage in laboratory can lead to wastage. Okay, examples including living equipment running when not used, using excessive amount of energy, and not properly maintaining or calibrating the equipment. Okay, number 3 is sample wastage. Sample wastage can occur through mishandling of the samples, improper storage, spillage or cross-contamination, and so on. Number 4 is energy wastage. Laboratories use significant amount of energy, and it includes when you turn on the AC for too long and not using it, ventilation, heating, and so on. Okay, number 5 is water usage. Water wastage. Laboratory use water for experiment and cleaning purposes. Therefore, the wastage can occur from leaking, overuse of water, or improper water management. Water management practices. And number 6 is paper and plastic wastage. It can occur through documentation, packaging, and consumables. It can also occur from excessive printing, improper use of disposal samples, or improper recycling, and so on. And lastly, number 7 is inventory wastage. Inaccurate inventory management can lead to wastage. For example, the expiration of chemicals and materials, overstocking, and lastly, inefficient utilization of resources. Therefore, it is important for us to adopt sustainable practices, implement proper waste management strategies, and spread the awareness to improve overall efficiency.
Chemical waste generated from lab activities can pose great environmental and health risk if we do not manage it properly. Proper handling, storage, and disposal are crucial to ensure compliance with safety regulations and minimize environmental impacts in managing chemical waste. So, without further ado, these are the 3 ways we can handle chemical waste properly. First is with training and awareness to lab staffs and students about the hazards associated with different chemicals. This training should also cover safe handling techniques, the use of personal protective equipment or PPE, and proper labeling chemicals. Next is to segregate chemical waste based on their properties such as flammable, corrosive, or toxic. This can prevent potential reactions and determine the appropriate storage and disposal methods. And finally is to minimize the waste generated when using the lab. This includes optimizing the experiment procedures, using smaller quantities of chemicals, and using alternatives or greener chemicals. The first way to store chemicals waste properly is to use proper containers made of chemically restrained materials. They should be labeled with its contents and its hazard symbols. Next is to separate containers based on their compatibility to prevent reactions or cross-contamination. This should be written in a guideline and should be provided to the lab staff. And lastly is to secure the storage area with proper air ventilation system and keep it locked to prevent unauthorized access. These areas should also be inspected regularly to ensure safety of these chemicals. Lastly is to dispose this chemical waste properly. One way to achieve this is by identifying the hazardous waste and determine the right disposable methods. A guideline should be provided to the staff and should be followed to classify these waste and assign it to proper category waste. Partnering with disposal service provider is important too, as they are certified and equipped to handle and treat these different types of waste properly in a sustainable way. Next, we can also document the disposal activities, which is important to track these waste management practices effectively, and relevant permits also should be obtained if it's necessary to go on with the experiments that we will commit in the lab. Last but not least, we should use our environmental engineering knowledge to assess the potential environmental impacts of chemical waste disposal methods and help determine the most sustainable and environmentally friendly disposal options that can be obtained in our lab in UIA. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Hi everyone. This is me, Atiq Muhammad Gay Saleh, with matric number 1615763. Today in this video, I am going to talk about the sustainable laboratory practices that can help promote recycling and reuse materials. Now we have to move to the next slide. First of all, waste segregation. The first point or the first step, a critical component of a sustainable laboratory practice aimed at effectively managing different types of waste generated with a laboratory setting. That means it involves the systematic separation and sorting of waste into distinct categories based on their characteristics and disposal requirements. The second point, probably labeled waste bins or containers, are essential to facilitate waste segregation, which that means clear and visible signage indicating the specific waste. Also, streams helps laboratory personnel identify the correct containers for disposal. The last point, by implementing effective waste segregation practice, laboratories can not only comply with requirements only, but also contribute to environmental sustainability. That means it enhances the efficiency of waste management process, reduce the potential for environmental pollution, promotes the safe disposal of hazard materials, and also creates opportunities for recycling and reuse. Now we have to move to the third slide. The second part, recycling programs. Establish recycling programs for commonly generated laboratory materials such as glassware, plastic containers, paper, and cardboard. Clearly label recycling bins and provide information on what can and cannot be recycled. The third one, reusable containers. Encourage the use of reusable containers for simple collection, storage, and transportation. Replace single use plastic bags or containers with alternatives such as glass bottles, stainless steel containers, or plastic containers. The fourth one, material reuse. Identify opportunities for reusing materials with the laboratory. For example, glassware and plastic containers can often be cleaned and sterilized for reuse. Develop standard operating procedures for cleaning and reusable materials.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Alia Shazwani Nabila binti Rani, matric number 2016958. So, I will talk about calibration and maintenance of the equipment in the laboratory. Okay, first, what is calibration and maintenance of the equipment? is a function or action required to ensure the proper working order of a piece of the equipment in the laboratory. Lab inventory management and maintenance is essential to ensure that laboratory runs smoothly. By properly managing your lab supply, you can stock the right amount of inventory so that we can have what we need for everyday operation. Okay, so there are few tips and practice for managing lab inventory. The first one is by consult the manual or lab manager for cleaning demanding equipment, because different equipment has own specialized or types to clean it. The second one is by create a detailed stock list. It is important to identify the low turnover items in the lab inventory. This also will help for better focus the needs of your lab and also help to order the optimal amount of supply for your lab. Next is by create a system for tracking the supplies. This could include using your sample management software to track your inventory or creating a manual system using spreadsheet or database, because so far, the most efficient and less error-prone way of managing lab inventory is by using the software. And the last one is by organize your laboratory by labeling your inventory and being thoughtful of where you place your inventory item. This will make it easier to identify and find what you need and prevent wasted time looking for misplaced supplies. Okay, next we move to the laboratory maintenance. Okay, why laboratory maintenance is important? Laboratory maintenance is important for several reasons. First and foremost, it ensures the safety of individuals who work in the laboratory. Proper maintenance of laboratory equipment and facilities can prevent accidents and injuries, such as fire, explosion, and chemical spills. This is especially important in laboratories where hazardous materials are used or stored. Next, it is also important for ensuring the accuracy and reliability of experimental results. Well-maintained equipment is more likely to function properly and produce consistent and also reliable results. This is essential for scientific research, as the validity of experiment and the conclusion that are drawn from them depend heavily on the accuracy and precision of data that is collected. Furthermore, regular maintenance of a laboratory can help to prolong the lifespan of equipment and facilities. This can save money in the long run, as it can prevent the need for costly repairs or replacement of equipment that has been damaged or worn out due to neglect. Regular maintenance can also prevent equipment from failing unexpectedly, which can disrupt ongoing experiment and cause delays in research. Lastly, laboratory maintenance is important as it can help to create a positive and productive work environment. A clean, organized, and well-equipped laboratory can improve the morale of individuals who work there and can make them easier for focusing on their research and experiment. This, in turn, can lead to increased productivity and successful completion of research projects.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Hanis bin Ahmad Rizal. Today I would like to talk about good laboratory practice, GLP. By implementing GLP, we can significantly reduce the wastage in the lab. So basically, what is GLP? GLP is a set of principles and guidelines that ensure the quality, reliability and integrity of laboratory studies. So the causes of neglecting GLP, inadequate training. So if there are less training, the knowledge will be insufficient to understand the GLP principles and protocols. Second is poor documentation. Incomplete or inaccurate documentation of experimental procedures and results. So lastly, the wastage of resources. Inaccurate results can result in the wastage of valuable laboratory resources such as reagents, samples, and also equipment. Okay, so let's talk about the potential solution. So first, we can provide training on GLP to laboratory personnel or to the students in case of IIUM to ensure the understanding and the compliance of GLP. And the second one is we can develop and follow standardized procedures for all laboratory processes. And lastly, we can implement the quality control measures to ensure the reliability and integrity of data. As for conclusion, neglecting GLP can have significant impact to the environment. The wastage might be not handled carefully. So if we can implement GLP, we can also minimize the wastage towards the environment. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nurhaja Aminah binti Muhammad Arifin and my metric number is 2014620. I will proceed the presentation with chemical spill response and clean up. So, it's important to develop the protocol and training for the handling chemical spills in order to minimize the potential wastage and environmental contamination. So I have listed several protocol that the student have to obey in order to respond when chemical spill occur in the laboratory. So first, for safety orientation. Provide comprehensive safety orientation before they begin working with chemical. So, before the students go to the laboratory to do the experiment, they have to be provided with basic education on chemical hazards, including the different types of chemicals, their properties, and potential risks associated with the spills. If the chemical spill happen, so that the students does not feel they can understand the importance of handling the chemical, and if the chemical spill happens, they do not feel they know the consequence. They don't know the consequence if the mishandling happen, and they will avoid to do any mistake that can lead to chemical spill in the laboratory. Second, for the spill response procedure, develop clear and step-by-step response procedure tailored to student use. So the instructor or lab assistant have to introduce the procedure first in order if the chemical spill happen in the laboratory, such as immediate response in case the chemical spill happen. So the student have to inform the staff or lab assistant, so their superior about the case, and then student also have to be teach how to wear the personal protective equipment such as PPE when respond to the chemical spill. Third, for the hazard assessment, educate the students about the types and quantities of chemical presence in laboratory. So the student know how many types and quantity of the chemical present in laboratory, so they can make the clean up according to the chemical types when the chemical spill happen in the laboratory. Then communication and reporting. Notify the instructor or lab assistant and report a spill incident for future reference and analysis. So if the chemical spill happens, the first step is to notify the instructor or lab assistant so they can assist the student to clean up the chemical spills. So, and record the incidents in for the future reference. Then, supervision and oversight. Ensure that students are always supervised by qualified instructor or laboratory assistant. And lastly, practical training. Conduct practical training sessions where students can practice spill response procedure under supervision. So before students proceed with the experiment, they have to undergoing the practical training sessions in order to avoid any mistake during the real experiment. Next slide for the substitution of hazardous chemicals. So we explore the alternative for the hazardous chemicals such as less toxic or non-toxic in order to reduce the potential wastage and the associated risks to use in the experiment in the laboratory. So first, so there are some suggestion in order to find the less toxic or non-toxic alternative. So first for the green chemistry principle. So these principles. So for this principle, we will use the chemical products that minimize the use of hazardous substance. So this principle aim to design a chemical process and products that minimize hazard, reduce the waste, and more sustainable to the environmental impact. Second, reusable and refillable materials. Provide reusable materials to minimize the wastage of single-use items. So this help to reduce the production and disposal of plastic or paper products that contain the potential hazardous chemicals. Third, safer regions and stains. Use alternatives that are non-toxic and have lower environmental impacts. For example, replace the toxic dyes with plant-based or natural dyes for staining purpose, so that the impact to the environment is not too high. And lastly, research and labeling. So use the products that are labeled as environmental friendly, non-toxic, and low in volatile organic compounds, so that the environmental impact is lower to the environment and not cause hazard to the environment.